What if I told you that the numbers printed on your billing statement hold the key to discharging debt, but no one told you what they really are? Now, in this video, I'm going to break down how remittance routing numbers work, how they connect to hidden financial systems, and how understanding them can change the way that you respond to debt. Now, I've studied consumer law, banking operations, and administrative remedy, and I'm here to expose the truth buried in fine print. Before we dive into this video, make sure to like the video, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We want to make sure we are at the top of the algorithm so people can see the content that nobody is talking about. Number two, make sure you watch this video all the way to the end, because this is not legal advice. This is not financial advice. This is for educational purposes only. Make sure you do your due diligence after you watch the video. Okay? Number three, it's important for you guys to make sure to do that extra due diligence after the video so that you don't just go based off of my understanding. Okay? Take everything that I'm saying with a grain of salt. Take the information that you've learned and just look it up. Okay? Cross references. I'm not telling you to trust me at all. You dig me? Because I'm built on speaking truth and not really built on trying to get you guys' trust. Okay? And I don't want you guys to move like that. I think that's one of the biggest things. We are too busy trusting people instead of just finding the truth ourselves. So I want to empower you guys to do that. Now, what we're going to be talking about is what a remittance routing number is. We're going to talk about the hidden use in it in the banking system. We're going to talk about how this ties into debt discharge, how to use this in your process, and why they don't teach it. So make sure you stay all the way to the end, because we're going to be talking about some key concepts that nobody is talking about. Now, let's dive straight into it. Okay. What is a remittance routing number? Okay. Now, what a remittance routing number is typically found at the bottom of the bank statements, utility bills, and loan coupons. Okay. I don't know if I'll be able to pull it. I mean, I can click this, but okay, bet. So when you look at a payment coupon, okay, this is CV water, so it may be a little bit different. So I'll click a couple so that you guys can see. But just looking at the example, right, you'll see the account number, address, whatever the case may be. But where you'll see the routing number is down here at the bottom. Okay. Now, in most cases, the routing number is on the left hand side. Okay. And this is like the account number. This is more of like the banking account number that essentially will be used for processing. Okay. Now, if we go back and we can look at some other ones, right? Some other ones look a little bit different. You may see it in different parts of the statement. It may look a little bit like this, right? With less zeros. Okay. Also here, it's a 9-digit number. So you just count 9 digits from left to right, and that is more likely the routing number. But essentially, when you understand this, it looks like a bank routing number, but it's tied to the remittance or the return processing. Okay. Now, this may route to a lockbox processing facility or a fiduciary entity tied to the creditor. Okay. Now, these numbers aren't just for payment. They route value. You dig me? Just like a check. When these numbers are on this check, just know it is tied to some type of account, okay, where it can be deposited or used to be routed. That makes sense. Now, let's talk about the hidden use in the banking system. Now, financial institutions use back-end routing systems for internal settlements. Okay, so a lot of things are happening behind the scenes. They'll put these numbers on there and they'll try to confuse you. But the reality is this literally usable. Okay, they'll make it seem like, oh, it's just nothing, right? But it really is something. Always be very keen on what's on your documents that you get from the companies, because they always hold meaning. And you also have a right to ask them for the meaning of it. Okay. One of the key things when it comes to debt collection, one of the key things when it comes to lending or any type of bill or whatever contract must require full disclosure. And that's one of the contract law principles. So even when challenging debt, you are having a conversation about contracts as well. Okay. Now, I want you to understand that the remittance number may lead to a financial intermediary, not the original lender. So sometimes this number doesn't even tie into the original lender. And I'm putting quotations because the original lender is not always, well, we understand the original lender is not them. They're not actually lending money, but we'll just put the original lender in the place of the banking institution that you acquired credit from. Okay. This also supports the idea that your payment is being securitized or settled elsewhere, no matter what. Okay. No matter what. Now, here's how the law ties in. We can dive into UCC 3-603. UCC 3-603 says that if a tender of payment of an obligation to pay an instrument is made to a person entitled to enforce the instrument and the tender is refused, there is a discharge. Okay? To make that make sense, a tender of payment discharges an obligation if the creditor refuses. So when you send your remittance coupon, if they decide to refuse it or dishonor it, then there is discharge, regardless of what they try to make you think or regardless of what you believe. Okay, it doesn't matter what you believe and what they tell you. What matters is what's literally written right here. Okay, what's written right here explains that there is discharge, regardless. Do you guys gather that? Then we dive into the aspect of 12 U.S.C. 411, which pretty much says that, hey, lawful money can be demanded and remittance could be interpreted as such. Okay, so Federal Reserve notes to be issued at the discretion of the Board of Directors of Federal Reserve System for the purpose of making advances to Federal Reserve banks through Federal Reserve agents as hereafter set forth for no other purpose are authorized. Said the notes shall be obligations of the United States and shall be receivable by all nations, member banks, Federal Reserve banks, and for all taxes, customs, and other public dues. They shall be redeemed in lawful money on demand at the Treasury Department of the United States in the city of Washington, D.C. or at the Federal Reserve Bank. So either in Washington, D.C. or the Federal Reserve Bank. And essentially you can redeem lawful money using remittance. Okay. But what happened is they won't give it to you. All right. And this is where you got to be strategic in using this in your discharge battle. So let's just talk about how this will tie in to discharge. Okay. By using remittance with proper notice, affidavit, tender letter, you are offering lawful payment. Okay, if you guys can't give us the actual lawful money, whatever the case may be, if we're able to create a negotiable instrument or a tender of payment, this should be used in exchange for lawful money. Okay, but let's just say you can't use lawful money. This is when you just credit the account. Okay, or you deposit it into the account, because we understand that a deposit is an unpaid balance. So if a deposit is an unpaid balance, then what we are doing is balancing out that deposit. We're balancing the books. I talked about this in my last video, where debt discharge isn't something you are getting away from paying the debt. It's more of you balancing the books, because there is an unpaid balance. Okay, so you have to record that certificate of debtness so that unpaid balance can be fulfilled. Okay, you can't fulfill an unpaid balance with another promise to pay note like the dollar. You dig what I'm saying? Because that's not really documenting anything. Okay, so even when you pay for something using your dollars, you're not really doing anything to the debt. You're not doing what it is that should be fulfilled, which is documenting that unpaid balance. Dig me? 52 side says you can't pay debt with a debt. Absolutely. Just doesn't make sense. It would just increase the debt. So when you use the remittance with proper notice, tender letters, and you make, because one says, okay, bet, how do I do this properly? If you how you would do it properly, and we'll explain this more in depth in a second. But when you send your remittance coupon, you fill it out properly and you go according to 31 CFR 328.6, and you follow 31 CFR requirements of endorsements to a T. Okay, and we won't read all of this right now. Okay, but it literally breaks down how you should fill out this coupon. One will ask, okay, how do I do this? And they'll talk about a money order. They'll talk about all this stuff. No, just read this right here and it tells you. You want me to tell you and give you the advice so that I can have liability to it. No, read it yourself, educate yourself on your own. If you don't understand it, go on Google, type in, break this down in layman's terms, and then it'll tell you exactly what it needs you to do, and do it. All right. Accept responsibility. All right. It tells you everything right here, and it goes hand in hand with 328.5. But other than that, you can read this entire section. And I implore you to read this entire section. Okay. So if you do this properly, you endorse it properly, and you send a letter, affidavit, a tender letter saying, hey, look, I just created my remittance coupon, whatever the case may be. Please use this to credit the account through a tender or payment letter. You have created you are offering a lawful payment. That is how you do it. So now, if you wrote in your affidavit and using things like UCC 3-603, understanding 12 USC 411, that lawful money can be demanded, and that tender of payments, if you give a lawful tender of payment and they refuse it, that there is discharge, then you don't really lose. One says, well, they ignored me. Well, damn, that's the beauty about this. You can ignore me all you want, but the law says that if you ignore me, I can either assume that that's an acceptance, or number two, I can assume that that is a refusal. Okay. So if it's rejected or not responded to it, that creates dishonor under UCC 3-505. Evidence of dishonor. Okay. Under evidence of dishonor, it pretty much breaks down exactly what happens in case of a dishonor and what you should do about it. Okay. These are laws that are already put in place. All you have to do is read them, have full understanding, and boom, there is the understanding right there. One will say, okay, bet, well, you know, what happens if they ignore me, or whatever the case may be, or is this stuff true? I mean, they wouldn't have these, I'll break down these terms, and they wouldn't have these terms here, and they wouldn't have these codes in place if you couldn't act, if they didn't actually work, if it didn't matter, okay? You may not understand it now, but that's why it's okay for you to go and read it and understand it. Overstand it, so that you can be confident in the process, so that you can be confident in what it is that you are doing. You feel me? So when you do this, this allows the administrative process or the court to provide you remedy. Okay, the remedy is either the discharging of the debt, or the remedy is even you making money from the lawsuit, okay, being awarded for your damages. Or the remedy is whatever you ask for, okay? Just know you may ask for a certain amount of remedy, but at the end of the day, it's still settlement, still negotiation. So it'll turn out however if your negotiation skills are good or bad will determine what you get as remedy. For some people, they don't get any money, but they get this off their credit report, and they get the discharge of the debt. They get the company stop trying to collect, okay? And you want to do this either through small claims court, and you want to make sure that you have created a administrative paper trail and had them default. Okay. If you don't know what that is, go check out my last video where I talked about the 5-letter method to discharge debt. Now, as a bonus, just for understanding purposes, we dive into UCC 3-401, which is the signature, which breaks down that, hey, look, unless a person signs a instrument, that right there is what actually creates the obligation. So one may say, okay, bet, well, that means that I have the obligation to do something once I sign it. But what if that obligation wasn't even created unless you signed it? Okay. So not only is obligation you are obligated to something, but if I pull up, 18 USC 8, you dig me? And I pull up the definition of obligation. It says that the term obligation or other security of the United States includes all bonds, certificates of indebtedness, national bank currency, Federal Reserve notes, Federal Reserve bank notes, coupons, United States notes, Treasury notes, gold certificate, silver certificate, fractional notes, the certificates of deposits, bills, checks, drafts for money, drawn by or upon authorized officers of the United States. So here's the beauty about this. It literally says that obligation is what you would call money. You feel me? So if your signature is what actually creates the obligation, then your signature is what actually creates the money that is being loaned to you, my baby. Just a little food for thought right there. So your valid signature always is going to equal the obligation, and it cannot be created unless you sign. So there's the proof in the pudding that your value or your signature actually creates value. We talk about this in every single video. And I hope that in this video, you gather that understanding. Okay? So the thing is, the question you'll ask yourself is, whose signature is the obligation based on? It's yours. Okay? And your remittance can counter that. All right? So yeah, you created the obligation, but now you can also remit it and balance it out. All right? So here's how to use this in your process. Okay? Number one, identify the remittance routing number on your coupon or statement. Just like I showed you before, this routing number. Okay? When you identify that routing number, okay, you want to prepare a conditional acceptance and a tender of payment letter. Okay? You want to include that remittance instrument, whether it's a money order, promissory notes, or other legal payment formats. And you want to send this certified mail or registered mail. Some people do a certified. That right there just creates that paper trail, especially if you believe they're going to ignore it. Or you can just send it registered. When you send it registered, that right there, it makes it insured. So if it's insured as a security, then they have to treat it as such. It's not something that they could just say, oh, you get what I'm saying? And if they do not reply, you want to follow up with a notice of dishonor. You want to follow up with a fault and dishonor and give them an opportunity to cure. That'll be that first non-response. Then when you get to the second non-response, then you want to have them default. Now you have just created an administrative paper trail of them not complying to the United States Code, to the Uniform Commercial Code, to the regulations that they must abide by. Okay, so the thing is that the paper trails and the routing numbers tell a story. You just have to read it. Okay, now here's why they don't teach this, because this knowledge changes the power dynamics. When you want to be sovereign, sovereignty doesn't come through the paperwork that you fill out, whatever the case may be. I spoke to a client yesterday who is in a situation where they could potentially, where they signed an agreement that they didn't necessarily agree to. Okay. And when you don't have the knowledge or the lack of knowledge, or you are, ignorant to the system or ignorant to your contracts, yes, absolutely, you're going to sign for something you never agreed to. But here's the other fact of that. If you are ignorant to it, that is also something that is a superpower, in the sense of, okay, bet if you find out now that you were ignorant to a contract that you signed to, then it actually lacks legality. Okay, that is something called lack of capacity, which is a contract law fundamental. Okay, if I were to pull up that contract law fundamentals, boom, all on Google. Okay, contract law fundamental. The contract's purpose and subject matter must be legal. Contracts for illegal activities are unenforceable. Boom, that's one. Parties must have legal ability to enter the contract, meaning they must be of legal age and not be mentally incapacitated. This also means that they must know what it is that they're signing for. Okay, there's another part that I don't see here that talks about the meeting of the minds. So we both have to knowingly fully understand what it is that we're contracting to in order for it to be valid. If in some way, shape, or form you can prove that you were not even meeting them on the minds, then that contract becomes unenforceable. And here's the other aspect. When you aren't meeting of the minds, one thing that I should know is not only about what I'm agreeing to in the contract, but I also need to know your standing in the contract. What role do you play in the contract, if there's any? Okay, because if I don't know that you're going to make money off of this contract, that is not really a contract. There's more of a financial asset to you that you're going to then make money off of. That's not something we never met on the minds of. That's if you would have just told me that from the beginning, then I probably would have been like, oh yeah, you can make money off of this contract if you're not going to come after me for the debt. If you make money on this contract, then we don't need to have a conversation about me paying you back. Boss, at the same time, a living being and a dead entity cannot contract. Okay, the dead contracts with the dead, And that LLC, that corporation, your straw man is considered a dead entity. So in essence, they're maneuvering, contracting with your straw man. They're not really contracting with your natural living, breathing person. So this is why you see the all caps names on every single contract that you sign as it pertains to a consumer credit transaction, because that all caps name or that dead entity actually doesn't have that doesn't really have rights. That dead entity honestly have waived the rights. Okay. But as the natural living, breathing person, you actually have control and power over a contract where you're signing. And notice how that dead entity doesn't even sign the contract with you. When it's a contract, then both of y'all are signing. Okay. So understand that banks rely on your ignorance of remittance roles and internal processing. So they don't want you to know that this is being routed to somebody else. They don't want you to know that this remittance coupon balances out the books. They don't want you to know this stuff so that you won't do it. And even if you do learn it from somebody like me and you try to do it, if you don't know and understand what it is that you are doing, if you don't know and understand the laws that actually back this up, if you don't know how to understand how to enforce this, then they're going to essentially have that power. Okay. So knowledge is the true power. It's not about me breaking down the step-by-steps. I can tell you the step-by-steps, but the step-by-steps won't matter if you don't have the knowledge. And then vice versa. If you have the knowledge but don't have the step-by-step, then it won't really matter. Okay. But I think that if you have the knowledge, you'll be able to gain more clarity and power so that you can be able to create those own step-by-steps. See, the knowledge came first before I understood the step-by-steps. Sometimes we try to do it backwards, and this is exactly why we're in the position that we're in today, where we just do the steps and then we feel like it doesn't work, but the reality is it is working. You're just ignorant to how it's supposed to work. Okay. So when you treat the bill as a negotiable instrument, it actually shifts the liability, okay, onto them. Okay. You have done your part. Now they have to do theirs. That's what I mean by shifting the liability. The same way we shift the burden of proof through conditional acceptance to them. They're trying to say that we owe a debt. Well, prove I owe a debt by answering X, Y, and Z. If you cannot prove it, then I have no liability to you. If you want me to have liability to you, then just answer those simple questions. If you're moving in honor, then answer those simple questions, right? So when you understand routing, you're not just paying a bill, you're actually directing the value, okay? So they hide the truth in routing numbers and payment systems, but once you understand how remittance work, you stop being a debtor and start acting like a creditor. When you're maneuvering as the person that is creating the value, and you're not moving in the aspect of, the person who doesn't have the power, when you're moving in the aspect of the beneficiary, then you are actually going to benefit. Okay, when you move in an aspect that you are creating the value, then you will energetically feel that way. But when you energetically, yes, you can hear these things that's coming out of my mouth and you can watch these videos as much as possible. But if you don't believe or understand that you are the creditor, then it won't matter. You're going to continue to be treated like the debtor. Okay, just understand that the power changes when you have the knowledge behind it. You dig me? So this is what I want to talk about, is essentially making sure that you guys are fully aware of the system that you're in. Okay. And what we do here is, really, we talk about this to empower individuals to take action, to empower individuals to actually do their research, to empower the individuals to not be susceptible to what the banks are going to tell you. I think that's the part that we kind of hope and expect, that the banks would just do it for us. But no, we kind of have to initiate it. We kind of have to maneuver and take control over it. Because when we maneuver and we take control over it, then they don't really have much of a choice but to comply. When you have that confidence and you stand in that, then they have to maneuver how they're supposed to maneuver. Treat you like a sovereign person, sovereign being. And trust and believe, you are a sovereign being. You do have free will. You won't have free will if you continue to ask for permission to do what it is that you need to do. Well, there's no such thing as free will. Yes, it is. Part of the free will is, okay, bet, how can I learn? I can either sit here and after this video, go look up these laws myself. I can sit here and take notes, or I can just sit here and not, and then complain about why it isn't working for me. Free will is actually real. Okay, I don't care what anybody says. Now, if you want to learn about this, you want to get the full remittance template kit down below. It's in the Complete That Guide. Okay, you want that paper trail checklist, that'll be in the Complete That Guide as well. Okay, that's down below in the description. I would get it now before it is gone. Number two, if you want to work with me one-on-one, specifically about credit, specifically about funding, specifically about getting ahead in the system and building wealth, tap into my one-on-one coaching. I help people fix their credit, reach to 100K in funding, and build brands. Okay, if you're not trying to do those three things, don't book that call. Okay, number three, if you want to follow me, it's on Instagram at biz.nick. All right, follow me on Twitch. I'm live right now on Twitch doing the breakdown prior to making this video. So tap into the Twitch so that you can be able to see those live breakdowns as soon as I drop them. As a matter of fact, you're probably watching this at 8:30 p.m. Tomorrow I'll be going live anywhere between 8 and 2 p.m. So I would make sure to hit the follow button so that you can get those notifications on the Twitch. You dig me? But other than that, my last question is, have you seen weird numbers on your statements and didn't fully understand them? Drop a comment. Let's decode it together. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell because Remedy is hitting in the paperwork. All right. I love you guys. If you got all the way to the end, comment the word discharge and I'll see you in the next one.